It happened during a routine presser, but nothing about the exchange was routine. A reporter pushed, subtly at first, then more aggressively, trying to pull Shedeur Sanders into a headline. But instead of taking the bait, Sanders defused the moment with a level of awareness most rookies don't develop for years. He spoke carefully, respectfully, and made it clear he wasn't going to be a puppet for narratives.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
After that, the tone of the room shifted. They realized he wasn't going to crack. Not today, maybe not ever. That moment wasn't luck, it was learned strategy. Sanders is playing a long game, not just on Sundays but every time he steps in front of a mic. His maturity makes it clear he's not here to entertain drama or sell sound bites. But without visible support from Stefanski or others in leadership, he's still left to weather it alone. That contrast, between Sanders' poise and the silence around him, is what fans and media alike need to examine more closely. The Cleveland media thought they had it all figured out. A young quarterback, a famous name, a new face in one of the NFL's most intense, unforgiving markets. To them, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a rookie, he was a story waiting to be exploited. They came prepared, not with honest football questions, but with traps, bait, and loaded language that had nothing to do with the game. They were looking for a quote they could twist, a reaction they could magnify. What they got instead was a lesson in restraint, and a room full of silence after realizing they had absolutely misjudged their target. Shedeur Sanders shut them down without raising his voice. He didn't lash out. He didn't storm off. He didn't even let the tension show. Because he didn't need to. His poise spoke louder than any headline they hoped to write. Every attempt to provoke him, every not-so-subtle jab or out-of-pocket political question, was met with calm, clarity, and zero emotional leakage. He didn't take the bait. He walked around it. And that's what rattled them most. It's not just that Sanders defused the tension. It's that he understood exactly what they were trying to do and made it clear that he wasn't going to play their game. When reporters tried to drag him into culture war talking points or poke at his background, he didn't roll his eyes or snap. He answered respectfully, firmly, and moved right back to football. It was calculated. It was smart. And it was something you rarely see from someone this early in their NFL journey. This is where it gets uncomfortable, not for Shedeur but for everyone around him. Because while he's showing emotional intelligence, media savvy, and professionalism under pressure, the silence from inside the building is deafening. Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, has not once stepped in publicly to defend his quarterback or redirect the narrative. And that's not a neutral stance. That's when you have a young player getting picked apart by the media, not for his play but for how he refuses to engage in their personal or political bait, and the coaching staff says nothing, that creates a culture. And it's not a good one. It says, good luck out there. It says, handle it on your own. And that's exactly what Sanders has been forced to do. Carry not only the pressure of being the quarterback of a franchise that's still trying to find its identity, but also the responsibility of keeping his own name clean in a media environment that seems more interested in controversy than coverage. And somehow he's managing it all. No meltdowns. No passive-aggressive jabs. No cryptic social media posts. Just a young player showing more professionalism than the adults questioning him. But why is he even in this position? Why is the local press so intent on cornering a rookie who's done nothing but keep his head down and play ball? Why is a player's refusal to comment on politics suddenly more important than how he's executing on third down? It's because he won't give them what they want. He won't give them a headline. And when you won't play along, you become a target. So while Sanders is focused on staying sharp on the field, staying neutral in interviews, and letting his work speak for itself, the Cleveland media continues to chase a story that doesn't exist. And Stefanski? Nowhere. No public defense. No message to reporters to keep it about football. Not even a passing comment to reset the tone. This isn't just a PR issue. It's a leadership issue. Because when your quarterback is showing you how to carry yourself under pressure and you can't even match that effort with a simple gesture of support, what does that say about the standard you're setting? And don't forget, this is the same market that's burned through quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. They say they want someone who can handle the spotlight. Someone who's composed. Someone who won't let the noise get to him. Shedeur Sanders is checking all those boxes, and they're punishing him for it. Instead of celebrating his maturity, they're testing it. Instead of building around his focus, they're trying to chip away at it. And instead of standing behind the guy who's doing everything right, The coaching staff is letting the media keep swinging unchecked. Let's talk about what Sanders isn't doing. He's not fighting the press. He's not playing victim. He's not dragging anyone through the mud. He's keeping things centered on football, on leadership, on improving. That's what should be leading every local headline. That's what the fans should be hearing about. But instead we get gossip. We get press conferences that feel more like political briefings than sports interviews. And we get a growing sense that the Browns, as an organization, are failing to protect one of their most valuable assets. Not because they don't believe in him, but because they don't know how to lead with him. There's something broken in that dynamic. Because Sanders has already shown that he's not afraid of the pressure. He's just not going to dance for it. And when you're in a market that thrives on quarterback drama, that refusal to play along makes you a threat to the system. That's why this matters. It's not just about one press conference or one awkward moment with the media. It's about a pattern, a system, a culture that keeps rewarding players who say the wrong thing and keeps ignoring the ones who choose discipline. And if the Browns can't recognize the rare leadership qualities they have in Sanders, if they can't find the basic integrity to back him when he's showing more maturity than most veterans, they're going to lose more than just games. They're going to lose the trust of the locker room, of the fan base, of the very people they need to build something real. Because Shedeur Sanders is already leading. Not with flash, not with drama, but with consistency. And the more the media tries to twist that, the more obvious it becomes who's really in control of the room. If the Browns have any sense, they'll stop watching this play out from the sidelines and start setting the tone. Not with grand gestures, but with basic accountability. With leadership. With support. Because this team has spent too many years chasing the wrong things. And now they have a quarterback who might finally be the right one. Not just for how he plays, but for how he handles everything. If they're smart, they'll realize what he's offering isn't common. And if they're paying attention, they'll know this moment is bigger than one interview. It's about what happens when leadership walks in wearing a jersey, and everyone else stays silent. If you've made it this far and you're wondering why the franchise isn't standing behind the one guy who's keeping the temperature down, give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment. What should Stefanski have said by now? And if you're here for stories that cut through the chaos and focus on the real dynamics behind the headlines, subscribe. Because the Shedeur Sanders story isn't just about football. It's about how one player is carrying more than just the ball, and doing it with more grace than anyone expected. And here's the kicker. It shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't take this much discipline, this much restraint, and this much emotional labor for a young quarterback to simply exist in the NFL without becoming tabloid fuel. And yet, that's exactly what Shedeur Sanders is up against. Not because of anything he's done wrong, but because he's not giving the media the chaos they crave. Let's call it what it is. An ecosystem that feeds on controversy. And when you don't give them a quote to blow out of proportion, they'll push until you do. They'll twist non-answers into silence, diplomacy into deflection, and maturity into dodging. But Shedeur isn't dodging. He's standing firm. He's answering what needs to be answered and ignoring the noise. That's not a deflection tactic. That's control. That's leadership. That's a young man refusing to let his story be hijacked by people who don't care about football as much as they care about clicks. And the silence from the organization isn't just frustrating anymore. It's dangerous. Let's be real. We've seen players unravel under this kind of pressure. Not because they're weak, but because they're human. Because they get tired of constantly having to prove themselves off the field. Because every soundbite becomes a weapon, and every quiet moment becomes suspicious. Shedeur has been forced to play two positions, quarterback and public relations shield. And one of those jobs isn't in his contract. When the Cleveland Browns brought him in, they didn't just bring in a quarterback. They brought in a leader. Someone who understands how public image affects locker room dynamics. Someone who's capable of representing the organization far beyond the box score. And instead of recognizing that, they've let him be pushed, tested, and provoked, alone. It's not just unfair. It's exhausting. This isn't a hot-headed rookie who needs to be reined in. This is someone who's already showing he can handle the pressure, the expectations, and the media circus better than half the league's established players. And yet, the silence from Coach Stefanski and the Browns front office only makes the media bolder. Because when leadership doesn't say, "This isn't okay," the people in the back row assume it is. That's why the political questions keep coming. That's why they keep poking at personal matters that have nothing to do with football. Because no one with authority is stepping in to say, "Stick to the game." And to be clear, Shedeur has answered. He's been respectful. He's been mature. He's been poised. Even when asked about political figures like President Trump, Questions that could explode into national drama if answered the wrong way. He responded diplomatically, emphasizing respect and refusing to be dragged into a polarizing headline. That's not media training. That's awareness. That's someone who understands the moment. Someone who knows what happens when a quote gets taken out of context. Someone who's not just representing himself but the team. And somehow the team still hasn't returned the favor. You know who's paying attention to this? The rest of the locker room. When your quarterback is left alone to navigate public firestorms, every other player is watching. They're watching to see if the organization will back him. They're watching to see if the coach will speak up. They're watching to see if professionalism gets rewarded, or if it just means you're easier to target. And right now the answer is pretty. What's wild is that none of this has anything to do with Shedeur's play on the field. And that's exactly the problem. The focus has shifted. Not because of his performance, but because the media isn't satisfied with someone who won't give them a headline. They're bored by maturity. Uninterested in composure. They want someone to snap. To slip. To say something that gives them ammunition. But Sanders doesn't give them anything. He sits down. He answers questions. He stays focused. And when the press tries to spark a fire, he calmly puts it out. No theatrics. No frustration. Just grace under pressure. And still, no one from the Browns has stepped forward to say, "That's our guy. He's doing it right. Respect him for it." It would be so easy to change the tone. One quote. One moment of public support. One press conference where Coach Stefanski says, "Shedeur is handling himself with the kind of professionalism we admire. Let's keep the focus on football." That would be enough. That would reset the room. But it hasn't happened. And the longer it doesn't, the more the burden falls back on Sanders to manage it all himself. This isn't just about one interview. It's about the repeated expectation that young athletes must carry themselves perfectly, silently, without mistakes, and without backup. It's about a culture that thrives on watching players crumble, and then pretending to be shocked when they do. To have an opportunity here. Not just to protect a quarterback but to set a standard. To say, this is what leadership looks like and we support it. To stop waiting for things to spiral, and instead prevent the spiral altogether. But right now, the franchise is watching from the sidelines. And Shedeur is still out there doing what they won't, protecting his own name. Keeping the message on football. Showing every sign that he's built for this moment, even if the people around him aren't. The irony is hard to ignore. The media showed up expecting a kid who wasn't ready. They expected someone emotional. Someone easy to push. Instead, they got someone who made them look small, without saying a single thing out of line. That's not just control. That's power. And whether the Browns acknowledge it or not, they've got something rare on their hands. A quarterback who knows how to lead on and off the field. A young player who doesn't fold under pressure. Someone who understands the bigger picture, who knows how to move with strategy, not impulse. But it won't matter how composed he is if the people around him keep letting the noise drown out the signal. The fans see it. The team sees it. And if the organization keeps quiet much longer, the damage won't just be public, it'll be internal. Because leadership isn't just about game plans. It's about having your players' backs when it counts. And right now it counts. And here's where the real frustration kicks in. Not because Shedeur Sanders is being tested, but because he's passing those tests better than anyone expected, and still being ignored by the people who should be standing up for him. The Browns have a quarterback doing everything right. He's not blowing up in interviews, he's not blaming teammates, he's not ducking accountability, and he's not giving into the media's constant push for drama. And instead of using that as a building block for a new kind of culture in Cleveland, one rooted in composure and maturity, the team is watching it play out like spectators. It's not just disappointing. It's almost insulting. Because if you're Shedeur Sanders, you've got to be asking the question every single time you step up to that podium. Why am I out here alone? It's not a secret. Anyone paying attention can see what's going on. The media in Cleveland has a pattern. A formula. Find the rookie. Push him. Ask him about everything except football. And when he doesn't break, keep pushing. Because the real story for them is if they can make him. And yet, week after week, Sanders walks in with a calm presence, answers the questions without adding gasoline to the fire, and leaves without giving them a single inch of drama to exploit. That's not easy. That's not natural. That's learned behavior. That's a young man who's had to study not just defenses on the field, but defenses in real life. He knows exactly how to deflect a question without creating a quote. He knows how to be firm without being combative. And he knows how to hold his head high when the room is practically begging for him to crack. That takes focus. That takes emotional intelligence. And it takes a level of patience that shouldn't have to be tested this hard. But here's the worst part. The more grace Shedeur shows, the less support he seems to get. Because he makes it look easy, the people around him treat it like it is easy. And that's where the leadership vacuum inside this organization becomes impossible to ignore. Kevin Stefanski has had multiple chances, to step in and protect his quarterback. Not because Shedeur needs saving, but because that's what coaches are supposed to do. Create boundaries. Keep the media focused on the game. Stand next to your players when the noise gets too loud. Instead, Stefanski has stood back. Watched. Waited. Said. And silence in this case isn't neutral, it's permissive. It tells the media, go ahead, keep asking him the political stuff. It tells fans, this isn't a priority. And it tells Sanders, we expect you to take care of this yourself. Which he has. But that doesn't make it right. Because let's not forget, this is still a rookie. A player who hasn't even had a full NFL season under his belt. And yet he's carrying himself with more professionalism than half the veterans in this league. And somehow, instead of that being applauded and protected, it's being left to fend for itself. It's not hard to see the double standard here. If Shedeur had lost his cool, if he had clapped back at the media or walked out of a presser, that would be national news. It would be used to question his character, his readiness, his ability to lead in a big market. But because he's calm? Because he's poised? Because he refuses to escalate? He's ignored, dismissed, pushed. That's the game the Cleveland media has been playing. And it's exhausting to watch. Instead of asking about offensive schemes or how he's adjusting to the pace of the NFL, they're tossing in political questions and attempting to box him into answers that will create headlines instead of understanding. They're not trying to understand Shedeur Sanders. They're trying to frame him. And to his credit, he's not letting them. When they brought up President Trump, out of nowhere with no connection to football, he didn't dodge the question, but he didn't engage in the political performance they were hoping for either. He said what needed to be said. Respectful, neutral, and clear. He walked a line they were hoping he'd fall off of. And when he didn't, they shifted again, probing for something else, another angle, another trap. It's not reporting. And here's the thing. Shedeur Sanders has made it clear he's not playing that game. He's here to win. He's here to lead. He's here to work. And the constant effort to undermine that through media manipulation isn't just disrespectful, it's revealing. It reveals how the media prioritizes narrative over nuance. It reveals how little support players get when they don't create scandal. And it reveals how rare it is to find a young athlete who knows how to protect his own peace in a league built on spectacle. So here we are, watching a quarterback do everything the right way and still get treated like he's the one on trial. And the franchise? Still hasn't said a word. They could shift the energy with one public show of solidarity. One moment of clarity. One instance of Stefanski or someone from the front office saying, let's not pretend politics is part of his job description. Let's talk about his reads, his poise in the pocket, and his performance on the field. But they won't. And that's why the regret hits harder, not just for the media who keep getting outclassed by a rookie, but for the Browns who are squandering the opportunity to rally around a player who's already proving himself as a leader not just through performance but through composure. This isn't just about a quarterback being disrespected. It's about what this situation says about the NFL at large, how we treat young players, how we chase conflict, and how the media wields narrative as a weapon. And Shedeur Sanders? He's not the villain. He's not the drama. He's the one trying to move past it. He's out there keeping his head down, making plays, and navigating interviews like a 10-year vet. And if Cleveland can't see the value in that, they're going to wake up one day and realize they let a foundational player carry the weight of leadership without ever giving him a team to lead. The truth is, this goes beyond football. What's happening with Shedeur Sanders is a mirror, reflecting the uncomfortable truth about how we treat young athletes when they refuse to conform to the narrative. The media wants reactions. The team wants results. The fans want wins. But when a player shows up and offers composure, maturity, and leadership, the kind of qualities you're supposedly building a franchise around, nobody wants to talk about it. Because it's not messy. It's not controversial. It doesn't trend. So instead we watch it get ignored. Or worse, treated with suspicion. Because that's the subtext when someone like Sanders speaks clearly, respectfully, and tactfully. The media doesn't see it as strength. They see it as evasion. As calculated. As someone who's media-trained and too polished. Translation? He's not giving them the soundbite they wanted. And then you look at the Browns just standing there. Letting it all play out. No intervention. No redirection. No ownership. which is wild considering this is a quarterback-driven league. Every team that doesn't have one is trying to find the guy. Someone who isn't just talented but who can lead. Who can steady the storm when things go sideways. Who knows how to talk to the media without setting off alarms in the front office. And in Shedeur Sanders they have that guy. He's already shown he knows how to carry himself under scrutiny. He's already shown he understands how to navigate high-pressure environments. He's already shown he can be the face of a franchise without bringing unnecessary drama to the locker room. But instead of celebrating that, they're making him fight for respect. Not for his stats. For his conduct. And what does it say when the most mature person in the building is the rookie? At some point we have to talk about how damaging this is, not just to Sanders but to the culture Cleveland claims they want to build. Because when you don't support the players doing it the right way, what message does that send to the rest of the team? That silence is strength? That standing alone builds character? That public pressure is just part of the deal? Wrong. Leadership isn't watching someone take heat they didn't ask for. It's stepping in when you know they shouldn't have to. It's acknowledging when someone's holding it together better than you are. And right now, Shedeur Sanders is doing everyone's job but his own, while still doing his job. He's showing up to press conferences like a professional. He's navigating media landmines without stepping on any. He's staying focused, avoiding gossip and keeping his eyes on the field. All without losing his cool or compromising his integrity. That's leadership. That's grace under pressure. That's the kind of player you build around. But if the Browns can't recognize that, can't protect that, and can't amplify that, then they're not just missing the point, they're wasting the opportunity. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't going to stop doing what he's doing. He's too disciplined. He's too aware. But leadership isn't meant to be a solo act. It's supposed to be shared, supported, strengthened by those around you. Right now, all the strength is coming from one direction. If you're still watching, hit the like button. Let us know in the comments, what would real support from the Browns look like at this point? And if you're here for stories that cut through the media noise and shine a light on the players who lead with character, subscribe. Because Shedeur Sanders has already proven he's here to lead. The question is, will Cleveland ever lead with him?